Fetch's real name is Abigail Walker, and she was born in 1995 and grew up in New Jersey. She was one of many conduits who survived the RFI's activation, but her powers would not awaken until she was in her late teens. When this happened, her parents tried to turn her into the local authorities, but to prevent this from happening, she ran away with her brother Brent. After moving from city to city over a long period of time, they would both eventually make their ways to Seattle, where they would come across a group of drug dealers and they would both eventually become drug addicts. One night, her brother Brent was captured by the Icorians, which caused Fetch to get in contact with one of Brent's former employers, Shane, who would manipulate her into helping him start a gang war against the Icorians. Shane would then capture Brent, forcing Fetch to continue doing jobs for him, but once the DUP got involved, Shane planned to get rid of two birds with one stone. So after arranging a meeting with Fetch at her hideout, he would stick Fetch with a drug-fused needle, and in the result she would accidentally kill her brother, only to be captured by the DUP soon after. Over the next 2 years, Fetch would be trained to use her powers alongside other conduits, and after telling the story of exactly how her brother died, the head of the DUP, Augustine, would tell Fetch that she had Shane in custody and offered her a chance to kill him, in which Fetch accepted without hesitation. Fetch would blow up a wall within the prison, allowing Shane to get a small distance away from the prison, but Fetch would chase him, corner him down on a cliff, and would successfully kill Shane. After killing Shane, Fetch would be transported with two other conduits, but once the convoy had reached Solomon Bay, the three would escape, with Fetch vowing to use her powers to take her revenge on the drug dealers in Seattle. Over the next 2 weeks, Fetch would assassinate 21 drug dealers, but she would be eventually tracked down by Delson, who wanted to learn more about Brooke Augustine, and he would be successful in ambushing her and not only acquiring her powers, but her memories too. Now having Fetch's powers, Delson would chase Fetch within a building where the two would battle each other, in which she would be defeated, with the two of them ultimately forming an alliance. After Delson acquired the video powers from Eugene, Augustine successfully recaptured Fetch and Eugene, and in the aftermath of their battle, Fetch and Eugene escaped, and now working alongside Delson, the three would plan an assault on the DUP headquarters, and with their help, Delson would defeat Augustine once and for all. Afterwards, Fetch would help Delson in jump-starting a new era in which humans and conduits could coexist. Not much is known about Nyx, but what is known is that before she received her powers, she was living in the rural areas of New Marais with her mother and siblings. One day, Joseph Bertrand III gathered several outcasts of New Marais, which also included Nyx's mother, so he could use the ray sphere that he had in his possession, which killed all the civilians in the immediate area, but Nyx managed to escape and survive due to the conduit gene that she had inside her, which granted her powers. Nyx immediately wandered through the swamps, burning corrupted and militia men alike, and from day to day, Nyx swore revenge on Bertrand and what he had done. It was during one of her attacks on the militia soldiers that Nyx would first meet Cole McGrath, who she had heard due to his actions in Empire City. Being a fan of Cole's, she would help him recover a blast core and destroy several of Bertrand's propaganda banners throughout the city. Nyx would even help Cole rescue Lucy, as she was captured and turned into a conduit with her powers to manipulate ice. While Cole was exploring the food town, Nyx would ask him for his assistance in releasing some monsters that were the result of Bertrand's experiments on other dormant conduits. She also revealed that with time, she was even able to communicate and control some of these monsters, and Nyx would be successful in rescuing some of them and taking them to the swamps to be tamed. Sometime after rescuing these monsters, Nyx would join Cole and Lucy in their fight against Bertrand, who at this point had transformed into a giant monster. With her help, Cole, Lucy, and Nyx were successful in killing Bertrand III, with Nyx spitting on his corpse before leaving. Nyx would return to the swamp that day, only to discover that all of her monsters that she had tamed had been killed by the beasts. Overwhelmed with grief, Nyx rushed over to Seek's rooftops just before Cole was about to activate the RFI. As Cole began to charge up the RFI, Cole, Lucy, and Nyx were all struck with enormous realization that the device was designed to kill all conduits, not just the beast. Nyx didn't care what happened to her as long as the beast was killed, but Lucy, not wanting to die, decided to join forces with the beast. In the final battle, Cole would team up with the local militia to slow the beast down, while Nyx transported the RFI to a substation to be charged. Nyx was successful in getting the RFI to the substation, but Cole was having serious trouble fighting off both the beast and Lucy. Needing to buy Cole more time, Nyx sacrificed herself by lunging at the beast with the full strength of her powers, stunning the beast. Her death, however, was not in vain, as Cole was successful in activating the RFI, killing the beast once and for all. Well, hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my next Versus Series matchup, and we will be jumping back into the infamous franchise as we got ourselves a good old-fashioned catfight between these two intensively offensive ladies, as Fetch the Laser Girl will take on Nyx the Swamp Witch. Now, due to the nature of this particular matchup, this one may end up being a bit shorter than one would expect, but I'll have to do my best. And I would also first like to apologize for the lack of diversity when it comes to images of Nyx that I'll be using in this video, because to my surprise, there's actually very few examples of artworks for Nyx, so I was forced to use a small amount of images quite a lot. Now, to save even more time, we will be going over very quickly the two departments that really won't play a factor in the overall analysis, that being their physical capabilities and weapons. When it comes to their physical properties, there's really not many differences. Both Fetch and Nyx are conduit females in their early to mid 20s, and by their looks, they are both in very good shape for combat. Like all conduits, they were granted a series of enhanced physical traits, which would be enhanced reflexes, speed, strength, as well as an enhanced healing ability and heightened resistance to some forms of damage, so no edge would be granted in terms of their physical capabilities. And neither of these two really have any weapons, so yeah, no one's really going to have any sort of advantage when it comes to weapons also. Now, Nyx does wear a set of sharpened fingertip claws, but this to me just seems more cosmetic than anything else. So with those two departments out of the way, let's jump right into the first main department, which really will matter, and that will be their powers. Fetch's primary powers are that of neon manipulation. Thanks to her years of training, she has developed a very high level of control over her powers that not only grants her great mobility, but also can be used highly effectively in combat. She is capable of firing volatile beams of neon as well as short consecutive blasts, allowing her to dispatch her enemies from great distances. She's also allowed the ability to use her powers to see the opponent's weak points, allowing her to quickly kill opponents. Abigail can also send a blast of neon wind to put enemies in stasis, allowing her to hit them at their weak points much easier. She can fire off multiple neon rockets to hit multiple targets at once. If an opponent attempts to get too close to Fetch, she can generate a concussive force field around herself to temporarily stun them. Now, going more in depth when it comes to her close quarters combat techniques, she prefers to use fast punches and kicks powered up by her neon energy. When it comes to her mobility, Fetch can transform herself into pure neon energy, allowing her to move around superhuman speeds, jump large distances, and run up vertical surfaces. She is also capable of using her neon thrusters to slow her descent from high points, but her most powerful attack allows Fetch to produce a powerful singularity which pulls enemies in for a few moments before igniting in a powerful explosion, causing massive damage and destruction to the immediate area. Nyx's primary power is that of Napalm Manipulation. The ability allows Nyx to warp, fire, and flammable substances such as oils and napalm and can manipulate them against her enemies. Her primary use of her powers when it comes to her mobility is her ability to teleport from one place to another, making her an extremely difficult target to hit. When Nyx decides to go on the offense, she can perform several powerful attacks, and creative ones too. She can generate and throw fire grenades and can send blasts that can temporarily stun opponents, and can also fly short distances. When using her powers over flammable substances, Nyx was able to grasp opponents with her powers, leaving them open to following up attacks. She can also generate continuous smoke screens that can disrupt an enemy, which can not only allow them to block an opponent's breathing, but can also block their vision as well, which could also leave them open to following up attacks. A unique ability that may or may not play a factor in this particular matchup, but is a cool thing I'd like to mention, is that in certain engagements, she does have the ability to call on the monsters that she has tamed that were created by Bertrand and have them fight alongside her whenever she calls them. When it comes to comparing these two ladies and their power set, it is clear that they are both bringing a lot to the table. When it comes to their mobility, you have Fetch's speed against Nyx's teleportation, and I do favor Nyx's teleportation. When Fetch runs with her neon powers, you can see which direction she is going, and in some cases, she can even leave a track of where she's been, while Nyx's ability to teleport in any direction at once makes her a much harder target to hit. Now when it comes to their offensive abilities, this is where it gets really hard to judge. For Fetch, her beams of neon energy and her ability to visibly see the weak points of an opponent would suggest that Fetch is best when fighting at a distance, making sure to stay out of an opponent's attack range. But she does possess attacks that would be effective at close range, and her concussive force field may be able to stun Nyx long enough for a following up attack. But the same goes in reverse, as Nyx's continuous smokescreen can affect Fetch's ability to fight back effectively, and it's possible that it can even affect her vision to see her opponent's weak points. And I do believe that Nyx's techniques of grasping opponents with her powers would be more effective than Fetch's force fields, because once Nyx grabs a hold of Fetch, she will not be able to break out of the hold. What you have here when it comes to their power uses and how these two prefer to use their powers would be the equivalent of someone with a sniper rifle trying to hit Nightcrawler as he is teleporting from location to location in a 360-degree area. Nyx's teleportation would easily allow her to get her hits in and quickly fall back out of the immediate area to avoid Fetch's retaliation. I will admit that when it comes to the variation of powers and the raw destructive power that both these two ladies have at their disposal, that Fetch does have the advantage. But when it comes to the effectiveness of their powers in an open area, Nyx's teleportation makes her a harder target to hit, and her continuous smokescreen will make it difficult for Fetch to even see, if even fight back. And once Fetch is effectively distracted by Nyx and moves in close for the attack, Fetch at close ranges will not be able to respond because she won't realize what is happening. And the only time that I can see Fetch having any time to really retaliate or change up her strategy is when she chooses to go on the run, forcing Nyx to have to give chase. So for all of these reasons, I will be granting Nyx the edge in powers. When it comes to comparing the tactical approach of Nyx, there's really not that much to say. Due to her fiery attitude, Nyx relied on pure brute strength to overpower her opponents. She certainly had the powers and mindset to apply unique tactical approaches when she wanted to, but it is unlikely that she practices to any level of effectiveness. When Nyx did come up with a tactical approach that required complicated steps in order to achieve success, she always had to rely on the help of others in order to complete the objective. Before Fetch was captured by the DUP, her offensive approach and overall usefulness of her powers was really all over the place. But thanks to Augustine's proper training, this not only gave Fetch a much stronger control of her powers, it gave her a much higher understanding of how best to use her powers effectively. Fetch was always capable of changing up her attack methods on the fly, and even had the foresight to know how to use the environment itself to her advantage. What's more is that unlike Nyx, who was mostly self-taught over her lifetime, never had the experience to fight against other conduits, and it is that fact alone which would unquestionably grant Fetch the edge in this department. Fetch had not only proper training, but actual combat experience, and what's more is that two of the conduits that Fetch has been in contact with that she would have trained and fought against were Hank and Delson. And it's not too much of a stretch to believe that Augustine did have Fetch and Hank battle against each other during these training sessions, and that Fetch would realize the advantage of taking the fight to the proper location. And it was this very tactical approach that she used against Delson, and there was no question in my mind that she would apply this against Nyx. So to save more details for the final verdict, Fetch will take the edge in battle tactics. Now, as I'm sure most of you can see, this fight will play out as a classic contest of Fetch's brains against Nyx's brawn. It's true that Nyx does have the more effective set of powers to control how this fight will play out, but this would only be effective out in the open where she has free range to move wherever she wants, and this would be something that Fetch would pick up on rather quickly thanks to her training against Hank and her experience against Delsin, and it would prepare her to be able to adapt rather quickly. The only reason that Delsin stood any kind of chance against Fetch was because not only did he drain her powers, he drained her memories, giving him an intimate understanding on Fetch's tactics. But this is a luxury that Nyx will not experience, and for the most part this fight will play out much like Fetch's fight against Delsin did, but with the opposite outcome. Now let's say that this fight takes place in Seattle and Fetch and Nyx are standing on opposing rooftops facing each other. I believe that this fight would start off with Fetch firing a series of neon blasts at Nyx, and though Nyx would be successful at dodging a number of these blasts, Fetch's experience and accuracy would kick in and she would manage to get a few light hits on Nyx, knocking her back. Needing to make herself a much harder target to hit, Nyx ramps up the teleportation speed from location to location, while at the same time using her powers to create a thick smoke screen that not only prevents Fetch from being able to get an accurate shot on Nyx, but it is actually blocking her vision and making it very difficult for her to lock onto Nyx's weak points. Fetch attempts to leave the area with her speed, but not knowing exactly where Nyx is, she runs right into her and Nyx immediately grabs her with her powers, and now with her arms bound, Fetch cannot use her powers, which leaves her completely exposed to Nyx throwing a series of fire grenades at Fetch, which knocks her back and causes some serious damage to her. While on the ground, Fetch attempts to immediately retaliate by firing off a series of neon blasts and neon rockets, and Nyx simply teleports too fast for her to get a lock on her. Realizing that as long as they are fighting out in the open, she's at a disadvantage, Fetch thinks of an idea that might be able to contain Nyx, and she immediately runs out of the area while provoking Nyx to give chase after a series of insults. Nyx gives chase after Fetch, who manages to keep up with Fetch to a degree, but Fetch manages to stay just ahead of Nyx to lead Nyx to a similar building to the one where she fought Delsin in, minus the open roof. And once Nyx arrives inside the building, Fetch immediately destroys the exit containing them both inside. Nyx realizes that she's been tricked, but thinks that she could still work under these conditions. It's dark and she fires a series of fire grenades to try and illuminate the area, but Fetch stays hidden in the shadows, just waiting for the right move. And as Nyx continues to scan the area, Fetch, using her sight, locks onto one of Nyx's weak points, being one of her arms, and fires a powerful neon blast at Nyx's joints, disabling one of her arms. Knowing that the conduit healing factor applies to both of them, Fetch needs to go on the full offense right now. Nyx attempts to teleport, but the closed off building prevents her from being able to get outside, limiting the distance that she can travel. But no matter how much she tries to teleport, she is still well within Fetch's attack range as she attempts again to use her smoke screen to perhaps fill the building up and attempt to choke Fetch out. But she immediately counters with a concussive force field and follows this up by firing a powerful energy wave in the direction in which knocks Nyx into a wall. Fetch continues her assault by firing a series of neon rockets, with the close proximity of the building making it easier for Fetch to hit Nyx. And now with Nyx seriously injured and being unable to focus her powers to teleport, Fetch uses her most powerful attack to create a singularity that pulls Nyx right into it before it explodes, and the blast being so immense that it actually levels the building where the two were fighting. And as the final result reveals itself, as the smoke clears, Fetch manages to climb out of the rubble, but Nyx, now deceased, can't. I declare Fetch, the laser girl, the winner. Well, that should do it for what possibly may be my final matchup involving infamous characters, but only time can tell, and anything's possible. But tell me, do you agree that Fetch would be able to outsmart Nyx, granting her the victory, or do you believe that Nyx's fiery personality and approach to combat would allow her to overpower Fetch? Share your thoughts and opinions with me and everyone else in the comments down below, and don't forget to like this video and follow me on Twitter to keep track of me and my future matchups. And like always, thank you guys for watching, you're awesome, and I hope you enjoyed this little preview for my next matchup coming out next month, and I have a feeling that some of you will be really excited to see this one. See you later.